Now, you might find this surprising coming from an ex-soldier, but I'm not a fan of war. Being at war, conflict, etc., it's a nightmare. Take it from me, I've been in one. And when war stops, the fighting ends, it still goes on in soldiers' heads. And for some of these unlucky buggers, it never ends. Now, unless we as a country get invaded, then I'm against war in general. Every country has a right to defend itself. And the Ukraine, you could say, is defending itself, but in my subjective opinion, it looks to me like it doesn't want to stop defending itself. Because there has been absolutely nothing stopping these people, Zelensky, Putin, and the Western governments who are backing and financing Zelensky, from all sitting around the table and talking it out. Peace talks. It's been suggested to Zelensky, but he's turned it down each and every time. Why? And it really irks me as well, the mainstream media who are pushing this war as well. They're warmongers, people like Julia Hartley Brewer. Now, I'm not a fan of Julia Hartley Brewer, but my other half is. In my opinion, I think she just says the right things. After all, she is part of the mainstream media or legacy media machine, isn't she? This group of people, journalists, activists, they are pushing for this war the same way they pushed the plague and the jab and everything associated with that. And so I bring your attention to Julia Hartley Brewer's recent tweet, which said, and I quote, "We are definitely at war with Putin." Well, who's we exactly? As far as I'm aware, and I've got my ear to the ground as does everyone else, the UK hasn't signed a declaration of war against Russia nor Putin. There are no British troops currently engaged in conflict against Russian troops. Well, as far as we know anyway. But we are financing Zelensky and the Ukrainian soldiers, etc. Even the idiotic Richard Tice, leader of Reform, he drove over there in a convoy to give them supplies. And that should tell you absolutely everything about Richard Tice. And as I predicted, with the Tucker Carlson Putin interview, the mainstream media in the West have gone into overdrive. They are really panicking. They are panicking because he's doing this, and they are panicking because it's not going to be behind a paywall. It's going to be on X. Therefore, the mainstream media and the governments, they can't censor it. Now, a journalist's job is to bring you the truth, the news. But sadly, journalists like Julia Hartley Brewer, they kind of twist things, don't they? I see nothing wrong in Tucker Carlson interviewing Putin. After all, there are other sides to this conflict and I want to hear it. It is my right to want to hear it, and if the authorities and journalists and the mainstream media or the legacy media want to silence it or censor it and stop me from hearing it, then they're as bad as they're making Putin out to be, aren't they? The mainstream media and the journalists or activists, they don't have control on this interview and they can't control the narrative, and that's what irks them. And that is what makes people or journalists like Julia Hartley Brewer tweet what she did. As a country, we are not at war with Putin. The only people at war with Putin are the Ukraine, Zelensky, and the Western journalists like Julia Hartley Brewer. And she is part of the mainstream media that told us the lie that Putin was dying of cancer a few years ago. And Tucker Carlson isn't a traitor for doing this. The guy's just doing his job. It's what Julia Hartley Brewer should be doing. She should be reporting on all sides of conflict and not hold a personal opinion or try to tell us what our opinion should be. On this, she said, "Why should Western journalists interview Putin? Is it any different to a British journalist interviewing Hitler in 1939? Or is it important that we hear all sides, even if it's a soft soap interview?" Now, she's implying here that Tucker Carlson's interview will be really soft and it won't be digging or hard-hitting. He won't be asking difficult questions. And the left-leaning, biased Western journalists, they're pretty one-sided when it comes to interviewing politicians anyway, especially politicians. They're like, every time they interview Joe Biden, if he comes out of an ice cream shop, they'll ask him, "What did you buy?" And the guy's in the midst of a scandal. These are the same people who fawn over Zelensky and never really asked him any hard-hitting questions, did they? Questions like, can he account that all the money Western governments, via their taxpayers, have paid him can be accounted for that has gone into a war effort? And again, I'm not against this war because I'm a Putin lover. That's not true. I'm against this war because not only is war shit, but I don't think we're being told the truth about it, even though we're paying for it through our taxes. And establishment warmongers like Julia Hartley Brewer should bear that in mind. And that's that. I'm Paz49. Thanks for listening. And until the next time, Roger Trout.